Good afternoon. National Assembly for Wales is now in session, and the first item this afternoon are questions to the First Minister. And question one is John Griffiths.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's waste strategy?
Yes, the waste strategy is set out in Towards Zero Waste, published in June of 2010. And it sets out our ambition to achieve a high recycling, low carbon economy and progress towards zero waste by 2050.
First Minister, the Welsh Government's collections blueprint is being reviewed following a recommendation from the Environment and Sustainability Committee. If that review confirms that curbside sort is the best method to achieve high-quality recyclate, high-quality materials from the recycling collections, will you seek to ensure that that is the method that's used across Wales?
Well, we'd like to see increased consistency of service across Wales. Currently, of course, the decision on which collection system to adopt is down to individual local authorities, and any change to this position would need careful consideration in the light of the blueprint review. And of course, I don't want to preempt the findings of that review at this point.
Paul Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, of course, the Environment and Sustainability Committee published a report on recycling in Wales in December of last year, and the committee made 7 important recommendations. Now, given that all of these recommendations were accepted or accepted in principle by your government, can you name one recommendation from that report which has now been implemented?
Well, of course, it's a matter for the local authorities, and what's important is that they shouldn't mix everything up, because we know if they do that, there isn't very much value to that recycling product. But what is important is that local authorities can make decisions that are right for their areas, bearing in mind that there are many alternative ways of dealing with waste across Wales. But what is important, of course, is that we continue to recycle more, and that has appeared in the figures that we've seen over the past decade.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm sure we would all be supportive of the Zero Waste Wales principle. Doesn't that highlight the foolishness of your government's policy in investing tens of millions of pounds in incinerating waste? Because if the waste policy did work, there'd be nothing left to incinerate.
Well, that's very naive, because that means that you'd have full control over the method in which products are packaged, and that's not the case at the moment, and that's the problem. We have to deal with the waste that we have in Wales. We can't deal with what is being sold in Wales. And so approaching zero waste is something that has to be done at least at an European level, if not a global level.
Right.
First Minister, last month the Welsh Government waived a £500,000 fine for Cardiff Council on its failure to meet its recycling targets on the basis that they had a credible plan to improve and meet the requirements under your waste strategy. Can you tell me, was privatising the waste and recycling services of the City of Cardiff part of the plan you approved?
Well, it's a matter for Cardiff how it organises its waste and recycling services. What is important is that it meets its targets in the future, and we'll be monitoring that situation very closely.
Question 2, Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What discussions has the First Minister had with the UK Government regarding the electrification of the main line between London and Swansea?
Well, the UK Government has restated its commitment to the project. We have reiterated to the UK Government that the main line must be delivered in line with the original announcements, given the importance of the project for Wales, and that does mean electrification to Cardiff by 2017 and Swansea by 2018.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. In replies to Baroness Randerson in the House of Lords, Lord Ahmad of Wimbledon stated that the Chair of Network Rail is putting forward proposals for replanning the enhancement programme and reporting to the Secretary of State in the autumn. Can I ask whether the Welsh Government has been part of the discussions that will lead to that report?
Well, we expect the UK Government to deliver on its promises. The Prime Minister was absolutely clear that he would deliver on this, and he mentioned the timescale. The Chancellor of the Exchequer mentioned it in his budget speech. We expect that timescale to be kept to. It's not a matter for discussion or for debate. The promises made of 2017 to Cardiff and 2018 to Swansea, we expect that promise to be kept.
Julie Morgan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the First Minister think that the overspend on Network Rail's 5-year programme, which it seems was known before the general election but not revealed, will impact on the Welsh access route into Heathrow, which is very important along with electrification?
Well, the member is right to point out there's a question as to whether this was known to the UK government, and they chose not to make the situation public before the general election for reasons best known to themselves. But it is not clear at the moment what this means for projects in Wales or that affect Wales, particularly, of course, the spur from Heathrow. But we know how important that is to traffic from South Wales, particularly, and their ability to use Heathrow Airport.
Altaf Hussain.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First Minister, your Economy Minister stated last week that she hoped the new rail franchise would bring rail improvements to Swansea and further west. We have a once-in-a-generation chance to improve their transport infrastructure on the back of electrification. South East Wales is getting the metro. What improvements can people in my region expect?
Well, I mean, we know, for example, that since the single franchise across Wales was created, that there's been much better integration of services, both east-west and north-south. And, of course, for the first time, the next franchising, when franchising is next agreed, the Welsh Government will have a far stronger role in terms of how the franchise is agreed and how rail services are then provided. And we expect, of course, then to be able to continue with the good work that's been done in integrating services further west with the rest of the network.
Bethan Jenkins.
First Minister, Network Rail has details on its website about the modernisation plan with electrification, consultation with local people with regards to bridges and any changes that will take place. I noticed there's been consultation in Newport and Monmouthshire with regards to bridge changes there, but in Llanharan it seems that the bridge will be totally removed, and that's causing some concern to local people. Is there anything that you've had by means of an update on this particular issue?
No, we would expect Network Rail to conduct the work they need to conduct on the bridges as quickly as possible and with the least disruption possible. It's inevitable with electrification there will be some disruption with some of the bridges, but certainly we expect that work to be carried out in a peremptory fashion.
Mike Hedges.
The importance of electrification is not only the shortening of the journey times, but the message it sends to potential investors. Will the First Minister continue to press the economic case for the electrification of the main line to Swansea?
Absolutely. The member and I are in exactly the same place on this. He will recall that when the UK government decided that it would not electrify to Swansea, we were in the vanguard of making the call that it should. When the UK government took the view that it would not electrify between Cardiff and Bridgend for reasons best known to itself, but further west from Bridgend to Swansea, we were in the vanguard of holding the Prime Minister to his promise that electrification would take place as far as Swansea.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon, the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davies.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the disposal of land by the Welsh Government to help regeneration was a critical part in providing a fund that could regenerate large parts of Wales. I appreciate the report is embargoed and not due to come forward till tomorrow, but in your opinion, do you believe that the disposal attracted good value for money for the Welsh taxpayer?
As the Leader of the Opposition says, the report is due to come before members tomorrow, and members will, of course, have the opportunity to consider it.
The question was quite simple, because you've obviously, as a government, disposed of this land. I was merely seeking your view. This is the last time we will meet as First Minister's, at First Minister's questions for 8 weeks, it is. You obviously have taken a view as a government because you disposed of this land. I'm not asking you to prejudge the report because it's not coming forward till tomorrow morning. So what I'm merely trying to elicit from you is, did you believe that it provided good value for money? I'm assuming you did, otherwise, as a government, you wouldn't have sanctioned the disposal of that land. So I put the question again. Do you believe it provided good value for money to the Welsh taxpayer disposing of these very valuable pieces of potentially developable land?
Well, it's a question, of course, that the Leader of the Opposition is perfectly entitled to ask, but I don't think it's fair to other members until such time as they've seen the entire report and will wish to ask their own questions to try to identify certain issues in the report and deal with them today. And it's right to say that members should have the opportunity tomorrow to deal with the issue.
I find that a very perplexing answer. I mean, you've obviously disposed of this land, so someone, somewhere, decided it did have value for money for the Welsh taxpayer, because otherwise, was there no ministerial oversight? OK, let's take it to the next stage. If the report does identify a lack of ministerial oversight, because ultimately it would have had to have been sanctioned, and I've used the word if, I'm not trying to prejudge anything, and we're not meeting for 8 weeks, in First Minister's questions, will you take action against those ministers if they are currently sitting in the government that has proved not to return value to the Welsh taxpayer by disposing of valuable Welsh Government assets?
I have to say, I believe that members of this Assembly as a whole should have the opportunity to ask questions on this tomorrow, and rightly so. The report has to be taken as a whole, and as a government we will of course respond to that report and any recommendations it might make.
We now move to Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch Llywydd. First Minister, medical professionals are increasingly saying that the link between children's health and sugary drinks has created an obesity time bomb. It's estimated that unhealthy diets cause 70,000 premature deaths every year. This affects people who live in poverty more, of course. Now, as you know, Plaid Cymru proposes a levy on sugary drinks, and we welcome the support for that from a growing number of individuals and organisations, including the BMA. Rather than ridicule our proposals, isn't it now time for you to perform a U-turn and back Plaid Cymru on this?
Well, there are 3 issues here. Firstly, the issue of whether there should be more tax on sugary drinks, and I think that has merit, I must say. But there are 2 other issues. First of all, we don't have the powers to do it, which is one of the issues, of course, that Plaid Cymru have not really fully dealt with. And secondly, it's this issue, which I have raised, of course, in this chamber. If you raise a tax with the intention of reducing a particular form of behaviour, you will inevitably reduce the amount of money that is taken in that tax. If you hypothecate it for a particular purpose, it's inevitable that the amount of money available for that particular purpose will drop. So the disagreement that I have with her is that if she says she's going to hypothecate a tax and it's going to pay for, as she put it, 1,000 extra doctors a year, it's going to come from a never-decreasing pot of money. That's the problem of hypothecation. If you have sin taxes, and smoking is one area, of course, that's taxed heavily, she will notice that it's not hypothecated, for the obvious reason that it provides an ever-decreasing amount of money to pay for a particular policy.
But that's not the question I asked you, and the arguments that you were put in are arguments against taxing cigarettes, alcohol, carrier bag usage. It's well established that you tax to disincentivise behaviour, and the link between ill health and poverty among children has been highlighted further in the media today. First Minister, a staggering 70% difference exists between death rates among children living in the most deprived areas compared to the most wealthy. If you're not prepared to take a policy change as the one that I have proposed this afternoon, what other policy changes are you prepared to make in the light of today's unacceptable revelations?
I think if we had the power to introduce such a tax, it might be something that we could look at. I'm not in disagreement with her on that particularly. What I do think she has wrong is this idea that you can take an ever-decreasing pot of money to pay for the same policy year after. It doesn't work out. She's right to say, of course, there are sin taxes, but the point is this. Taxes on cigarettes and alcohol are not hypothecated for a particular purpose, with good reason, because you're trying to dissuade behaviour. The tax take drops over the years. If your tax take drops, the amount of money you have to pay for a particular policy is bound to drop as well. So it's the hypothecation that her party has wrong.
Minister, we've never talked about hypothecation. I welcome your U-turn. I welcome your U-turn on this, and I'm glad now that you've had a change of heart. First Minister, overcoming poverty is the greatest challenge facing our country, and its impact on health outcomes is well known. We must give support to and defend those people who are living with poverty. Now, we know that you were at war with your party leader on limiting financial support to families with children. So what is your government planning to do to defend those people who will suffer from regressive Tory policies, backed by the support of your own boss?
Well, I mean, there are a number of questions. First of all, I've just heard the most stunning public U-turn that I've ever heard from any party leader in this chamber. It will come as news to all of us, and particularly those on their own benches, with the expression on their faces, that somehow the pop tax, as it's been called, was not meant to be hypothecated. The whole point was, and she's said it time after time after time in this chamber, it was going to pay for a certain number of doctors, and all of a sudden, there's been a complete U-turn. That's no longer the case. I mean, I welcome it because it shows that it was a fallacy to begin with, and it showed the shallow ground on which that policy was actually based. She makes a point about benefits. She and I are in much the same position on that. That much I agree with her. I wonder if she's in the same position as her parliamentary leader when it comes to fox hunting. I don't wonder about that. Given what Jonathan Edwards has said on that, remarkably silent. I know their blushes have been spared by the fact that the Conservatives have run away from having a debate on that. But she makes a serious point, and that's this.
Order.
How do we ensure that those people who have been targeted by this UK government are helped? We see, and we saw from the budget last week, it was a budget that had young people in its sights. A so-called living wage, which was not a living wage, and not introduced to those under 25, who for some reason are not affected by the living wage. Tax on housing benefits, a tax on student grants, a tax on student maintenance. It was a blatant attack on young people within the UK. And we as a government are, as we always have done, ready to do what we can to defend our people against what are unfair and unjust cuts. We saw £50 million removed from the Welsh budget. Imagine how many consultants, how many hospital beds, how many nurses could have been employed if the Tories hadn't pinched that money from the people of Wales.
I know it's the last session before the recess, but I don't want you shouting enough for the whole of the 8 weeks that you're not going to be here. So we now move to Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, figures collected by the Welsh Liberal Democrats this week have revealed that since 2012, 10,395 official staff complaints have been made to health board bosses in Wales about a lack of qualified staff available. In Cardiff, the number of complaints in 2014 alone was the equivalent of 12% of the total number of staff working at that health board. Do you consider this level of complaints to be acceptable?
Well, it's worth noting that the reported level of incidents represents a small percentage of total reported incidents. The overwhelming majority of reported incidents are incidents that lead to no harm. It's worth pointing out as well there are more doctors, more nurses, more midwives, more paramedics and more dental staff working in the Welsh NHS today than there were 10 years ago. And since 1999, the total number of staff working in the Welsh NHS has increased by a third. Now, I know she has an interest, obviously, in the issue, given the bill that she's promoted to the Assembly. I know that the Minister has written to her with a view to offering another meeting as to how that bill might be taken forward on a basis that's satisfactory to all.
First Minister, I'm aware that there have been increases in staff, but as you remind me on a weekly basis as a reason why you can't meet your own health targets, is that demand is also rising. And surely it cannot be acceptable to you that your staff working in the Welsh NHS are repeatedly telling their managers that they don't have enough colleagues around them to cope. And that's significant because we do know that there is a link between staffing levels and patient outcomes. And a recent report for the English NHS revealed a significant relationship between the number of nurses on duty in hospitals and 40 indicators of patient care outcomes. Therefore, given that evidence in England, do you regret, as I do, the decision by the English NHS to stop NICE's work in this area that demonstrates the evidence for safe staffing levels, a decision that has been criticised by Robert Francis, nursing unions and workforce experts?
Yes, I do. I mean, there are many questions, of course, for the UK government to answer about the English NHS. We want, of course, to make sure that the NHS is staffed at a safe and sustainable level, as does she. And as I said, we're aware of the bill that she has promoted in the Assembly, and as I say, I know the Minister is keen to discuss that matter further with him.
Well, talking about the NHS England's decision on staffing guidance, NICE's clinical director, Professor Baker, said, and I quote, "I think that the reason they don't want it is that if you don't like the answer to the question, you don't ask the question." In Wales, First Minister, would you agree with me we must not be afraid to ask that question? And in looking to promote safe staffing levels, firstly in the nursing profession, will you work with me and the Health Minister to ensure that Wales, the first part of the UK, takes this agenda seriously, as other parts of Australia announced this week, and will ensure we have safe nurse staffing levels on our wards with a view to introducing that potentially to other sectors of the NHS workforce?
The Leader of the Liberal Democrats is right to say that we should not be afraid of asking that question. She will know that the committee looking at her bill did raise a number of issues that need to be resolved. As I say, the Minister and her will be able to meet in the near future to see how and whether such a resolution can be achieved.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and question 3 is Russell George.
Will the First Minister make a statement on investment into the Welsh NHS?
Well, investing in our health services is a priority for the Welsh Government, as reflected in our budget for 2015 to 16.
Thank you for your answer, First Minister. In last week's budget, the Chancellor confirmed an additional £8 billion for the NHS, underpinning the importance to the NHS to the UK Government. Given the Welsh Government's record-breaking cuts to the Welsh NHS, will you confirm that the health service in Wales will benefit fully from the Barnett consequential in full?
Well, let's see it, because there's no sign of the money. I can promise you that now. It's lofty rhetoric, but no delivery yet from the UK Government. I would take him and his party more seriously if they had stood up for Wales and resisted the £50 million of the cuts that their own party imposed on Wales. £50 million that could have been spent on doctors, on nurses, on hospital wards. £50 million that could have been spent on the NHS in Wales, which has now been pocketed by the Conservative Party and the Chancellor.
No answer.
Lois Watson.
Diolch, Llywyd. The Welsh Government, on the other hand, has ring-fenced more than £20 million to support the 1,600 plus people who receive the Independent Living Fund in Wales, whilst the UK Government closed the nationwide scheme last month. First Minister, do you agree with me that as well as record investment in the NHS, spending on social care will save us money in the long run as people are supported to live independently?
Absolutely. Health and social care run together. We know you cannot separate them both. We know social care is being absolutely wrecked in England. Absolutely wrecked in England by the Conservatives.
Noise, so we can hear what the First Minister is saying. Apologies, First Minister.
I know these answers are inconvenient to them, Presiding Officer, but the reality is we know that health and social care spending in Wales is 5% higher per head than in England, and so his party can hang their heads in shame.
Ellen Jones.
Minister, Plaid Cymru does believe that pop tax could provide a useful revenue stream into the NHS. Andy Burnham, in the recent recent general election, promised to hypothecate a levy on cigarette makers to fund more staff in the NHS. Is that a hypothecation that you supported?
No, I don't think hypothecation works in those circumstances either. She seemed to be suggesting that she was in a different place there from her own leader when it came to the pop tax.
You're in a different place to your leader.
Is it hypothecated or not? I was asked a specific question. Did I agree with hypothecation in terms of a levy on cigarette manufacturers? The answer is no. That doesn't mean I don't agree with a levy, but I think it's dangerous to have hypothecation for what is an ever-decreasing tax pot. That doesn't make sense. Well, I don't agree with what he said.
First Minister,
I'm not here
to respond to questions when people are seated. Just if they're not standing up, they're not asking a question, so they don't deserve an answer. William Powell.
Diolch, Llywydd. First Minister, Powys Health and Wellbeing Action Group very much appreciates your government's support in their ongoing work to develop a wellbeing park in the grounds of Bronfleece Hospital. Indeed, this Friday sees the official opening of the Veterans Garden, which has already been widely enjoyed by ex-service personnel. The Action Group is making real headway towards setting up a community benefit organisation. However, it would be much easier and progress greatly accelerated if the Welsh Government could consider seconding an appropriate officer to support their multifaceted work. First Minister, in this context, will you commit to discussing this matter with your Cabinet colleague, the Minister for Health and Social Services, so as to explore fully the potential that Bronfleece Park has to be a showcase for innovative care of UK and international status?
Yes, I will do that, and I'll ask the Minister to write to the member with an update.
Question 4, Lee Griffiths.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on the future of onshore wind energy in Wales?
Well, following the United Kingdom government announcement on the 18th of June to close the RO support for onshore wind early, the outlook for projects in Wales looks uncertain.
You're quite right. They certainly do look uncertain, and in response to the announcement, the Minister in Scotland insisted on a meeting with the UK Minister. That meeting was held. A further meeting has been arranged with the communities and the investors and businesses who will suffer as a result of this decision. And also, of course, there is to be an emergency summit held later this year. Now, I wrote to you some fortnight ago asking what the Welsh Government's response was in comparison. I'm still awaiting that response. So could you tell us this afternoon to explain how you will respond to that decision, how you will stand up for Wales?
A letter has been sent to the United Kingdom Government, and there is a meeting held today to listen to the concerns of businesses in particular. And of course, we share the concern that this means that there won't be sufficient electricity ultimately. That's the problem here. With this decision and with the photovoltaic cells, and it's not very evident where we will get electricity from in the next decade.
First Minister, this announcement by the UK Government to curtail the subsidies for onshore wind has had an early and direct result in terms of the job losses at Maybe Bridge. Would you agree with me that just a few months into this UK Tory government, we see the green rhetoric already fading into history, and they simply do not understand the importance of the green economy, and that will cost all of the UK dear, including Wales, in terms of job losses and lack of progress?
100 jobs lost in a Conservative held constituency. Yes, so that's right. I think it reminds us all that there are in fact livelihoods at stake here as a result of knee-jerk decisions that are taken by the UK government. The member's quite right to point that out. There are other examples as well which are unclear at the moment in terms of what it means for our carbon emissions. One of the vaguest references I saw in the budget was over vehicle excise duty and what that meant. I suspect it will mean that the vast majority of cars that are now paying far less than £140 will find themselves paying that amount. So the greenest cars will pay more, while the most polluting cars will pay less. Surprisingly, we haven't seen more detail on that yet from the current UK government.
Jonathan Saunders.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, over recent years, we've seen within our own communities massive opposition to large-scale wind turbine projects, be it onshore or offshore. These do have the potential to damage our countryside and indeed our coastlines. Now, there's wide recognition across the industry that it's a broad range of technologies that is needed to take our climate change programme forward. What plans does your government have to review TAN 8 in order to allow different and new technologies to come forward as a viable option?
Well, TAN 8 is a land-based TAN. Anyway, it doesn't affect the sea. Now, if we're not going to have onshore and apparently now offshore wind as well, what do we have left? Because with the tidal lagoon, we know that the tidal lagoon has had permission to move ahead, but there's no strike price yet. No strike price at all. And it's absolutely crucial the UK government now tells the developers of the tidal lagoon what money is going to be on the table, because they haven't done that yet. We won't have marine energy. We won't have wind energy of in any form. What else are we going to have then? Because at the moment, there's complete silence on this. A knee-jerk reaction, no plans. And just talk to investors, talk to businesses, and they will say to you they have no idea what the current policy of the UK government is. And that is a dreadful position for the UK to be in.
Question 5, Mohammed Ashgar.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. What step will the Welsh Government take in 2015 to tackle domestic abuse in Wales, please?
Well, the Minister made a statement on the 30th of June, which informed the Assembly of the action the Government is taking to tackle domestic abuse following the royal assent that was given to the Act in April.
Thank you for the answer, First Minister. The Independent Police Complaint Commission recently called for all police forces in Wales to change the way they train officers and civilian staff who deal with domestic abuse cases in Wales. In particular, they are concerned that police forces are too reliant on staff learning online instead of interactive learning through case studies. Will the First Minister agree to raise these concerns with the police to ensure that training to deal with the domestic abuse cases is appropriate and effective?
Well, the member makes a fair point, and I'd expect the police to follow the advice given by the independent commissioner to make sure that their response to domestic abuse cases is as effective as possible. It would be much easier, of course, if the matter was devolved. It isn't, and his party resists that.
Jocelyn Davis.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, in relation to violence within the family, do you think that changing the law to give equal protection to children as adults from assault is unenforceable nonsense, or do you agree with me that it's high time we did it?
I think that these are issues that all parties will examine before the election. My party is on record saying this is something that we would want to move towards, but there are a number of issues that would need to be resolved on that journey, if I can put it that way. It's right to say that this is an issue that all parties are examining at the moment, although I do regret the fact that we could have had the opportunity to deal with this on an all-party basis, but that offer was not taken up by her party or by the others.
Question 6, Alan Fred Jones.
Will the First Minister make a statement on maintaining consultant-led obstetric services on the 3 general hospital sites in North Wales?
I'm sorry. I expect the Health Board to consult with its staff and the local communities in order to ensure that all women's clinical services in the region are placed on a safe and sustainable footing.
Well, the strategy, if there is such a thing as an obstetric strategy in North Wales, is in chaos following recent decisions. Now, the question causing anxiety to many people in my area, what will be the impact of establishing the Cernic on services in Ysbyty Gwynedd? Though the maternity services in Ysbyty Gwynedd have a very good reputation over a number of years. Can you give assurances that the current maternity service, which is currently consultant-led in Ysbyty Gwynedd, will continue into the future once this new unit is established at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd?
Well, there will be some changes when this is established, and it's something that was supported by Plaid Cymru, so you can't say that you don't wish to see the Cernic now. I don't think that the service will deteriorate, of course not, but when you have one centre that can deal with the more serious cases, then perhaps there might be some impact on the other units, but that will follow on from the assessment that has to be made. But in favour of it, I'm very much in favour of the Cernic itself, and we will ensure that the Cernic will be established on the Glan-Clwyd site.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Obviously, there's a great deal of concern still in my constituency about the future of the maternity services at Glan-Clwyd Hospital as a result of the uncertainty which was created by the Health Board earlier this year. The recent decision to not challenge the need to consult on the future of those services has indeed been very welcomed in North Wales. I understand that a consultation will now take place. What expectations do you have as a Welsh Government regarding that consultation and the involvement of the public and other key stakeholders? Because I was disappointed to learn about the consultation, not from the Health Board, but simply from a media inquiry yesterday. And it's clear that the consultation is obviously not getting out on the right foot if local stakeholders such as Assembly members are not involved from the start of the process.
Well, I expect the consultation to be full and open and transparent. The problems that still exist in that unit are still there. There's no point pretending that all is well and things can stay exactly as they are. We do understand the concerns of people in the area around Glenclwyd, and I know that the Health Board is taking steps to ensure, to look at ensuring that the service can continue for the time being, but there will need to be steps to make sure that the service is safe and sustainable in the long term. And that means dealing with the issues that are identified by the Royal College and others, which are not going to go away. The fact that no trainees can go there, they won't go there. The fact it's very difficult to attract middle-grade doctors there on a permanent contract. There's much that needs to be done to improve the reputation of the department for the good of local people. But I do believe that the Health Board, with its new acting chief executive, has taken the appropriate steps. And it's absolutely crucial, as we have said, in terms of regaining the confidence of local people, that there's a full consultation.
Aled Roberts.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Do you think, First Minister, that a period of 8 weeks of consultation over the summer months is sufficient? And may I also ask you, in March, you said that the business plan for the Cernic was to include all services for North Wales, and that would be prepared by November. Now, given that there will be 8 weeks between July and September of consultation, will that original timetable for the business plan be adhered to?
I don't expect that, because there are two distinct things here. First of all, 2 months is adequate as regards the length of a consultation, but what is important is that the quality of the consultation is high and that people are aware of the consultation and do know what kind of views they can input into that consultation. The Cernic is different because the Cernic is not just going to be imposed on top of the Glenclwyd maternity unit. That's not the idea at all, but it'll be an alternative and different unit staffed in a different way, which will be totally new. So I cannot see why we can't proceed with the Cernic itself and prepare for that, and also consider the current situation at Glenclwyd.
Question 7, Janet Howard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister outline what the Welsh Government is doing to promote tourism in Wales?
Yes, our tourism strategy sets out our priorities to support the tourism industry. Tourism in Wales is in a strong position. 2014 was a record-breaking year, as the number of overnight visits to our country by GB residents alone hit an impressive 10 million.
Thank you, First Minister. I'm glad that you're welcoming the improvement in the figures for tourism and recognising the importance of it. But survey after survey confirms that one of the major attractions for visitors coming to Wales is our stunning and unspoilt landscape. In light of the new Conservative government in Westminster agreeing to scrap subsidies to onshore wind developments, which I warmly welcome, having seen the imposition of one of the largest wind farms in one of the most iconic bays in the UK, in Llandudno, what is your government doing to protect our beautiful landscape from those wishing to industrialise it by erecting unsightly pylons and turbines? Thank you, First Minister.
A moratorium on fracking. There's a start, which her party was against. If her party had their way, they'd be fracking everywhere. No problem at all. And they talk to us about industrialising the landscape, and then there's that obvious problem that they have in terms of... well, you can shout a lot about it if you want, but there's that obvious problem in terms of fracking. So windmills destroy the landscape, and I understand there are people who believe that. Fracking doesn't. And there they are talking about industrialising the landscape. If they had their way, that's exactly what they would do.
Rena Pioworth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I know that the First Minister will agree with me that sport is an exceptionally important tool in attracting tourists to Wales, and in that regard, I wonder if the First Minister would agree with me that providing early Welsh Government support for a bid to bring the Island Games to Ynys Môn in 2025 would be an important tourism boost for the island, and how could I not invite the First Minister to extend the warmest congratulations to the Anglesey team that returned from Jersey just over a week ago with 10 medals.
Guy Amino gyda.
Well, may I join the member in congratulating the Ynys Môn team, and also, of course, I'd be willing to consider any bid as regards attracting the games to the island ultimately.
Question 8, Susie Davis.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government's policy for onshore wind farm developments?
Well, I think I refer the member to the answer I gave some moments ago.
I think that's a very sensible use of time, First Minister. But you will be aware that after over 20 years of campaigning by constituents in my region and beyond, 2 public inquiries, a Court of Appeal hearing and a judicial review, that the application for a wind farm at Mynydd y Gwair has failed. And I would like to thank the Deputy Minister for her recent decision, although developers seem unwilling to accept it at the moment. For a considerable period, a part of that period, TAN 8 has been in force. Putting aside all the other arguments that have been put to you by Welsh Conservatives over the years about the balance of onshore wind energy production, TAN 8 could not prevent this lengthy and expensive saga. Isn't that reason enough to review it?
Well, no, the party opposite come from the basis they don't want any wind energy at all. At all, onshore or offshore. We've heard several denunciations of offshore wind in this chamber, as well as onshore wind. So they don't want any kind of wind energy. And of course, you know, there has to be balance, I understand that, and we can't have the entire landscape covered in wind turbines, that I understand. But they don't want any at all, and they don't want to give communities even the opportunity to have wind turbines should they wish. It's quite clear to me now that what they want to see is an energy policy based on more mining, basically, more coal, more carbon fuel. They want to see fracking in place. They want to see as much use of fossil fuel as possible, and they haven't made that clear to the people of Britain. So it's about time the Conservatives were absolutely clear about what their energy policy actually is, before we all have to rush out and buy hamsters on wheels to keep the lights going.
Leo Griffiths.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, do you anticipate that the government's spatial policy through TAN 8 will continue after the development of a national development framework which is due to come forward in light of the Planning Act?
No, I believe that there will be time to consider the situation as regards planning when we get the new powers. And of course, that will be the point to consider what kind of guidelines should be in place.
Question 9, Anne Jones.
Thank you. What assessment has the First Minister made of the effects of the UK government budget on families in the Vale of Clwyd?
Bad for families, particularly bad for young people. And of course, we know that the budget will take some £37 billion out of public spending. And we know there are many hard-working families across the UK who will be hit especially hard by the loss of tax credits.
Thank you very much for that answer. And having spoken to some of the families, and particularly some of the younger people who have got families themselves, I think there's a double whammy there for them. And despite the cheers from the Tory groups last week when the Chancellor was on his feet in the UK, in the House of Commons, I think they should reflect that young people are our future. So I'm proud that your government has protected EMAs and also tuition fees to allow our Welsh young students to go and reach that aspiration. Will your Welsh Government continue to stand up for the young people and those hard-working families within the Vale of Clwyd and across Wales, unlike the Tories?
Yes. We know that 238,000 families in Wales were in receipt of either working tax credits or child tax credits in 2013 to 14, and we know that they are vulnerable. Because we know that for a lot of families, the earners are under 25, and so the living wage, for some mysterious reason, doesn't apply to them, because 25 apparently is some magical age that the Chancellor has picked out of thin air. We know the living wage will not compensate for the loss of tax credits. By some estimates, £12 an hour is the minimum that's needed to make that level of compensation. And we know that the most cynical part of this budget is a political calculation was made to hit young people because young people don't vote. That's what was done. That's what was done. And so what they think is that this is a pain-free way to save money because young people won't be bothered to go out and vote. If there's ever a reason for young people to go out and vote, the Tories provided that reason last week.
Mark Isherwood.
Thank you. Well, what assessment have you made of the effects on families in the Vale of Clwyd, across North Wales and Wales as a whole, of the introduction of a national living wage to reach £9 an hour by 2020, giving 2.5 million people across the UK a direct pay rise, and raising the personal tax allowance, which will benefit 1.4 million people in Wales and lift a further 29,000 out of tax altogether?
There's nothing more distasteful than hearing somebody well paid saying that £9 an hour is a magnificent wage, something that is a living wage. It's not a living wage at all. It is, in fact, a bare minimum for those over 25. What about those under 25? What have people under 25 done to the party opposite? Why are people under 25 being penalised? Why are they losing housing benefits? Why are they being penalised for being in work? Why is it the case that those who are losing tax credits are going to lose out? They can scream and shout as much as they want. It hides the shame that they show for what they're doing to working families across Wales and the rest of Britain.
I'm sorry, First Minister, they can't scream and shout as much as they like in here, although they appear to be doing that. Can we have a little quiet while we hear the replies, please? McAntoniv.
First Minister, low-paid workers in the Vale of Clwyd, of course, have the same interests as low-paid workers throughout the rest of Wales. Many councils throughout Wales have started introducing a living wage, as has the Welsh NHS. Does the First Minister recognise that the policy that's been introduced by the Tory government is actually undermining the living wage, and many who thought they were getting a living wage due to the removal of tax credits will now find they're back in low-wage poverty again?
Absolutely, because they thought that if you take away tax credits, you can in some way increase the wage to a level that's a living wage. It's not a living wage. We know from the independent studies, many of them, that it's £12 an hour at least. We know that people will lose it because of tax credits. We know that younger people under the age of 25 are not being protected. For some reason, we know that children will lose out, and we know the Tories don't care.
Thank you, First Minister. We now move to item 2, which is a business statement.